one of the best turnouts I've seen here. So thanks for joining us. I'm Sam Tynan. I am an account manager here at AWS. I actually have the pleasure of working with HQ Trivia and many other strategic companies and startups here in the New York City area. As account managers, it's our job to help really guide customers through the maze that is Amazon and AWS. So if you don't already interact with your account manager, I highly recommend you reach out, ask them questions, pull them in, make them a part of your team. I'll be here in the back if you guys have any questions or want to chat. And yeah, I just want to introduce our panelists here today for our Fireside Chat, starting with James Ruben. He is the Director of Product at HQ Trivia. So some things that James works on are building out new games like HQ Words and Sports, and working with product partnerships like Nike and Target to really just build and grow their brand. And we also have Amanda Vivender. I said it wrong, sorry. Vivender. She is a product manager at Branch. In her 2.5 to 3 years there, she's worn a ton of hats like many startup execs, working boots on the ground with large companies like Under Armour to traveling across the US and moderating panels just like this. So I'll turn it over to them.
Thank you. No, it's okay. Hello, everyone. I got promoted. I'm a product manager now.
Welcome to the product world.
Thank you. It feels great. Happy to be here. No, really excited to be talking about, driving success on mobile with you all. At Branch, we're committed to mobile growth, so this is very fitting. And, the man of the hour over here, outside of HQ Trivia, you have a fascinating background, quite impressive.
Thank you.
So, beyond the couple of startups that you co-founded, working for Microsoft and Google, being an investment partner, and teaching computer literacy in Botswana. Okay, so of all those roles, which was the most fulfilling, if that's possible to answer? And what have you learned about driving growth for startups along the way?
Yeah, thank you for having me here as well to AWS, and it's great talking to you and meeting you. They've all been very different. I think when you work at very large companies and then very small companies, you see exactly why they can turn out such different products and operate in such different ways. Certainly influenced a little bit by recency, but HQ has certainly been the wildest ride and probably the most fulfilling. When you see a company start from nothing and grow to become very popular, and start at a very small company and see it add people. You play all these different roles, focusing mainly on product, but I spent a lot of time as our first customer support manager as well, talking to all of our users, and I was also our first data scientist. So being in such a small place, you get to experience so much, and seeing the rise of something like HQ is incredibly unique.
Awesome. So let's take it back to starting from nothing and growing, obviously, into kind of a giant. Let's talk about when it was just a prototype, and and before that, it was just an idea, and a pretty bold one at that. I think it's fair to say. Like you're walking into investors and saying, "Okay, no, but it's once a day, and if they miss it, they miss it." How did you know this was gonna have what it takes to take off and scale to such a big user base, and how did investors know?
Yeah, sure. I don't know if they knew. I don't know if we knew. But we started to build conviction. A fairly common answer, I guess, is to build something that you yourself love. I think that was.
Still play.
I don't think I've missed a game of HQ Trivia in many years, or Words or Sports. So either should you. No. I think that early on, when you're building something that you're supposed to love, because you made it as well, it's very hard to follow that logic to a T. But the way that we tested out HQ Trivia originally with a bunch of test games, basically in the office, with employees hosting, with Scott was our first host hosting as well.
Right.
And once we started ourselves as employees demanding more and more test games, because we're working on a few different things at the same time. I think we knew that something fun was happening. And you mentioned the reaction to some of the early details, playing once a day, giving out free money. I think that both of those things didn't necessarily sit well with folks that like to create returns for their investment portfolios. Yeah. But I think that when you're creating consumer tech for us, it was prioritizing fun, prioritizing engagement, and all else was going to follow after that. So I think it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, very nice. And obviously it reached a point where it was able to generate revenue through partnerships with Nike, for example, like you work on, and through in-app purchases. Was that always the vision, or was that something that kind of came to be after some time?
It was definitely all part of the plan. I think that both of those revenue streams, in-app purchases and partnerships, had many challenges. For in-app purchases, when we started, the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store did not allow games like ours or apps like ours to have in-app purchases. There were a few gambling rules. We don't consider ourselves gambling, and we are not gambling. But Apple has different rules, Google has different rules than the governments around the world. So we were categorized originally as a gambling product there that had to follow the gambling rules, which meant no in-app purchases. So there was a lot that went into realizing that dream on Apple and making that a sustainable revenue stream for us. We actually are still in the process of doing it with Google, so we only have in-app purchases on Apple right now. Hey. In terms of partnerships, we worked with, and we continue to work with some amazing brands. Our goal there, though, has always been to create additive content. You'll rarely see a standard pre-roll ad or in-between game ad. We put a lot of effort with a great partnerships team, a great content team, and a great engineering team to pull off some of the tricks to make sure that every show that's sponsored and branded feels different and new and is additive to the show itself. So with Nike, you mentioned we gave out custom HQ sneakers, which I still wear around all the time. And I think one of the winners put theirs online and made a little bit more money off of the money that they already won from that game. And we'll bring stars from those shows or movies to come host. So we hope that it's still fun and engaging, even though there's a partner around.
Yeah, awesome. Obviously, having some of those things lined up from the start helps mitigate the risks of giving away free money and all of that. Cool. So let us take it back to when it was just the prototype and what that looked like, and then talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges of getting past that phase, because I imagine that's a big hurdle for a lot of inventors.
Yeah, I think for us, and you mentioned kind of the once-a-day timing, one of the hardest things that we had to do early on with our show was figure out how we could iterate quickly with a product that was only live for basically 15 to 30 minutes a day. Right. We had 2 shots a day for the most part to test new features, to figure out whether the show was going to work or not, and then we spent the other 23 hours of the day trying to improve the system. So that was hard for us, and it still is a challenge. We've through some great work with AWS as well, we've set up some amazing testing environments that help us iterate a lot faster. But that was a really big challenge for us in the beginning, figuring out how to iterate on product that just wasn't live all that often.
Right.
I think that we were very lucky to have a very passionate and committed community around our show. So from a product development standpoint, there was constant feedback on what people wanted and what we could be focusing our time on. So that helped us a lot as well to guide our development process.
Oh yeah, talk to us a little bit more about that, of how you weigh in, hey, I have this plan for our growth and these steps that we're going to take, and these are what we should integrate, versus, hey, I'm getting this feedback from users and customer feedback for new features. How do you balance that?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, largely my philosophy there is that all those opinions are very important, but to not necessarily focus on the specifics of what's being asked, and instead look at the whys behind what they're asking. Because well, when you have a game that gives out money, the initial feature request from every user is please give us
More money?
So that feature request maybe didn't come as strongly as the others, but I think that speaking to users, whether it's through our customer support channels, I've spent a bunch of time going around offices and watching people play during the day, or we would talk to students in dorm rooms or families around the dinner table. There was such a communal environment around what we created that it was very easy for us to tap into some of those groups. But at the end of the day, it's just figuring out really why they're saying what they want, rather than the specifics of the feature itself, and then using those insights to guide new features that we'd build and add to the product, or even new shows that we'd want to build.
Right. Nice. Okay, so I have, on here one of these, what technologies do you utilize? And going back to the fact that, AWS was able to help you through a lot of that, let's think about what tools you had to have in place from the start and to really, map out your product roadmap and what technologies you use today. Yeah,
sure. I mean, I think that, again, a lot of the challenges that we dealt with at HQ, and we still deal with, come from this very, very live, few times a day experience.
Right. Needs a lot.
Right. It needs a lot, none. Like for a very little amount of time, and then nothing. So I think that was a real challenge for us, and where AWS was super useful, and basically, using AWS's services, we would spin up EC2 instances in an insane speed for like a little bit of time, and then be dormant for the rest of the time. Right. That was our main tool, I guess you could call it, from the AWS side. I think in terms of other tools besides the wonders of cloud computing, I would say that we likely use fewer tools than you'd think in our development process. I mean, we're still a pretty small place. So, we have our standard organizational tools like Jira and Clubhouse, which are boring product management things that get like product managers excited, but nobody else excited. So we definitely
the excited people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, one excited person, and he's in the front, of course. I'll pay you afterward. Yeah, exactly.
I'll do it.
So that helps with the organizational processes, but at the end of the day, most of our development cycles are just super fast development and iteration. We're testing all of the time. Now we run shows internally to the company all of the time to test new features, test new games. And that's really the way that we're learning and iterating the fastest, just by building.
Nice. And then, talking a little bit about, your growth plan and, once launched, what were some of the main metrics that you were looking at? And did you have to build internal dashboards to look at those, or what was going on to track those metrics?
Yeah, true. So we do use a lot of analytic tools.
Okay,
so thank you. You covered my own tracks there. We are very analytically focused. Tableau is a big one for us, but also AWS has a lot of data resources. In terms of growth metrics, I think our biggest one originally was what we called the viral coefficient. Basically, how many users of HQ Trivia were inviting other users of HQ Trivia. For every user we brought on, how many people did they bring on? And that was also the impetus behind our probably maybe our first feature release once the game started growing, which were extra lives for a power up. Basically, that if you invited a friend, you got an extra life when they played their first game, and you would be able to get a question wrong and stay in and still win the prize. That concept of how many new users does each new user bring in has been very important for us, starting with extra lives, and every growth-oriented feature we've released since then. Mm-hmm. I think that most of our power-up development when it comes to gaming features have been very focused on referral chains or inviting new people. So that was a really big one for growth. We have another concept that we basically call engagement, which is maybe just a fancier, different word for retention, that we look a lot at. I think when we think about growth product development, you have very, very known but important levers for growth, like referral networks. Right. And then you have what we call engaging products, which are things that you maybe wouldn't be able to make a very strong argument for why this particular feature will grow the audience, will add a new user. I mean, growth is really just retaining and getting new users faster than you lose them, right?
Yep.
But we still have an entire team focused on those products, and we still think they're growth oriented because they're engaging, they make the game fun, they make all of our games fun. And while we can't necessarily draw a direct line as to what metric it is, what growth metric it is improving, we know that if we're going to provide an amazing experience, that people will keep coming, keep showing up, and we don't want to lose that fun as we grow into a more serious business.
Definitely. So it sounds like, your product development has a bit of a growth-driven mindset.
Yep.
Is there any kind of secret sauce to ensuring that, or is there close collaboration, or how do you think you got to that point?
Yeah, so I think that one thing that's a little bit different about at least our work than some other standard software companies is that we have this whole content arm, right? I mean, as we think about the product of HQ Trivia, you really can't divorce the cool tech that we have in the video serving and the UI elements from the show that we produce every night. The product is the same. So I think we spend a lot of time making sure that the content itself that is going on air every night also has these sort of elements that help retain people, help bring people back. So something that we've done very successfully, I think, is utilize themes for our content. So we would have Harry Potter nights, or and some of these were sponsored. Harry Potter nights, Friends trivia, music trivia. Sports started out as a theme and then got its own show because people liked it so much. So utilizing that content to also drive growth, we would have different audiences come in for different types of shows. So themes were really useful in that regard.
Very nice. So growth, which was achieved, and we'll kind of talk through those steps, but
never fully achieved, but yeah.
It's going. But let's reel it back when it was just launched and it's just
Sure.
in the stores, and you're like, oh, what should we focus on? What did you lose any sleep? What were you doing at that time?
I certainly lost some sleep. I think that from the beginning we always wanted to build a product that was not only better played in groups, but basically required groups for it to work. And that was going to help us grow, sure, but also build, more importantly, a very compelling user experience. So we build features and power-ups that are activated only when you play with friends or when you're in groups. We write shows that you need all of your friends or all of your coworkers or your entire family to win our games. They're hard, but that is very purposeful. When we design when we go through every show that we put on every night, we make sure that it will be most fulfilling in that you win, but also the most fun if you're playing with a group of people. So really early on, that was our product mantra, and that has stayed throughout the development, I think, and it's still really important as we think of new show concepts to build outside of just our game shows.
Was there ever any struggle of figuring out how to ensure it would stay challenging?
Yeah, certainly. There are some very, very good trivia players out there in the world. I think the 10-second time limit is very helpful for us. And actually, the group play, while it is certainly required or is like very, very helpful in order to win the game, also can be very detrimental. You see all the time we get videos either on Twitter or sent to us of people like yelling at their younger brother because they shouted out the wrong answer at the dinner table. Yes, there are people that are very, very good at trivia. But at the end of the day, there are dynamics at play that let us make sure that the same people aren't winning every night. And actually, just to plug our new show format, we have the HU Trivia has probably made its biggest structural change in the last few years. Last week or so, we launched a new show format that basically, at certain prize questions throughout the show, will offer the audience prize money. and we'll say you made it this far, you can take
Take it.
$30 or you can walk away.
Deal or no deal.
And so that is also, so our games maybe have gotten a little bit longer, but that has also been super exciting to watch because you see these people that are phenomenal at trivia and phenomenal at our game, getting super far and winning our big jackpot prizes. Last night, 5 people each won $20,000. And we can do those types of formats now that we've grown to scale, but it's also so exciting to see these members of our community that are so good and so engaged, and to still have hundreds of thousands of people watch them make it through is really exciting.
Nice. Talk to me about that first time you hit that 100K mark, because I know that was a milestone for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that thankfully, in a lot of ways, there weren't that many good comps for us to look at. And maybe still aren't. I mean, there are other shows that have come up that are now very similar to ours. But we weren't really a television show. We weren't really a mobile game. We weren't really a YouTube video. So we didn't necessarily know where to place our North Star. But 100,000 sounded like a lot.
Sounds pretty good.
So did 50,000, but 100,000 also sounded like a lot.
Yeah.
I think that HQ was able to was very fortunate that the whirlwind of 100,000 didn't last that long because 200,000 came right afterward, and the growth just happened amazingly quickly that maybe there wasn't as much time to reflect. Honestly, I mean, I think that we were super super lucky. Some of these just viral growth mechanisms that we built in worked kind of all at once, and it was such an amazing experience. So I think that we were very happy to get there, and I think that we were very happy to hit everyone after it.
Yeah. So wait, the next really, really big one was $1 million in 2018.
Yeah, that one is very big. I mean, I think that there was this. At that point, we were using Twitch as our comp, which maybe is better than some of the other stuff, and they were doing live streams in the hundreds of thousands, and when we hit $1 million, it was certainly surreal. I mean, the app has a number in the top left corner, and that's where our viewer count was. I think maybe it's become a little bit
We need
too
another
overdone when
digit.
we look at it, but yeah, exactly. We had to make a small technical change to support the numbers, but we're super lucky to have the audience that we had, and we just want to build a really fun experience, and that resonated with a lot of people.
So for folks that are hitting their milestones, are there any kind of best practices or learnings you have from, hey, how do we keep this going? How do we sustain this? How do we get to the next level? Or what challenges are associated once you achieve a certain level of growth?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, the milestone was really just important in that we had a milestone. We needed to be working towards something and measuring our progress against something. Those can certainly change, right? In fact, all the time our milestones are shifting. But I would say that that's the most important. Every company really should have a North Star, even if that North Star is moving around, because without it, you really can't necessarily measure your progress against anything. A North Star and a number-driven North Star and a mission statement. That
everyone agrees
everyone
on.
can agree on, right? So that everybody's aligned toward that goal, and will keep you grounded as you work your way toward it.
Nice. Okay, I'm going to go to an audience question.
Please.
We have 11 upvotes on this. I don't know if y'all can see that small thing, but I refreshed, so give me 2 seconds. Okay. What are some of the best moves that you've made on the product side that you saw actually move the needle? And what is something you've tried in hopes of boosting numbers that didn't work?
Sure. So one that comes to mind for moving the needle on the product side is about near the end of last year, we shifted our show, or we added a bunch of gamification elements to our show that seemed fairly standard, but points, levels, badges, things that allowed users to feel incremental progress as they played HQ Trivia, rather than just having this experience of either you win or you didn't. Every night you were earning points, you were getting new levels, getting new badges that also gave you power-ups to help you ultimately win that goal. I think that providing those user benchmarks along the way, that it wasn't just an all or nothing thing every time you played HQ Trivia, certainly moved the needle for us. It was a big product change, leaning into gaming maybe more than we ever thought that we were going to originally. But that one was super helpful. Something that didn't move the needle for us. So I talked a good amount about how early on we wanted to make sure that the physical community, the people that you were playing with, was not only helpful but also the most important asset to your enjoyment to the game. We spent some time, a good amount of time, basically trying to replicate that virtually. So you could add friends on HQ, and if you couldn't be in the office together, or you didn't live in the same home or in the same dorm room, or at the same dinner table, then you could still have a good amount of that experience together. So you could see what answers others were submitting. You could chat with them. That was what we thought was going to be a very successful product launch, and it was helpful in some ways, but ultimately didn't really move the needle for us from an engagement standpoint. I don't think we were able to replicate that co-located feeling virtually, and so that has since been turned off.
Okay.
But we'll likely make a comeback in some form.
In a different form. So you
form.
learned from.
We definitely learned.
Did you learn what exactly went wrong?
We definitely learned from. We learned a lot of things that went wrong with it. Hopefully we can make them right.
Not just one little thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think even on a grander scale, we actually had international shows of HQ Trivia.
Okay.
We had a show in the UK, show briefly in Germany and Australia. I think that we made some product assumptions about internationalizing our work that didn't turn out to be all that valid. I think that we thought that a copy and paste model in some ways was gonna work at least efficiently enough internationally, so that we can then just start building communities there and really start localizing. But that was a very difficult process for us, and we're now focused back again on making our US games as strong as they can be.
Interesting. So in that case where things, weren't able to be a copy and paste, was there consideration about going and full-fledged, let's research what exactly would make this a success, or what informed your decision to decide to focus back on the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, again, I guess our North Stars.
Okay.
Our mission to enrich and entertain the world, and our North Stars were really our viewership numbers. And these engagement numbers, which are basically retention. We looked at those for the other shows, and they weren't on par with what we were seeing here. We asked ourselves why and how we could fix them. I think refocusing our energy back to our U.S. shows was just an acknowledgement that there's a lot of potential here, and with a small team, you just can't do it all. I wouldn't say that you wouldn't see us bring those shows back, certainly. We definitely could, but I think that there's still a lot that can be done here. And we launched a bunch of new shows here, too.
Nice. So that kind of ties into, how to keep things fresh with something that is just a live stream in a short amount of time. So obviously you have all these arms of different kind of variety of shows. Any tips for people of trying to keep something fresh that feels like it might run out of fire? Yeah.
I'd go back to those like engagement, the engagement team that we have, or the engaging products. I mean, we, especially for small companies, even though I'm also advocating for North Stars, you can get lost in the like becoming a grown-up business too quickly, and I think that's when things from a product perspective stop feeling so fresh. And having worked at some big companies, it's a lot harder to iterate really quickly and throw stuff away and try crazy stuff that's just going to wow your user base, but maybe isn't moving all the right things that all your investors are asking you about, or what your dashboards say. So I think that both processes are important, but we really continue to make sure that the fun and the wow factors are really not lost, even if we can't necessarily tie them to the very important metric-driven work that is happening too, because without it, you just see what worked to move numbers and you're optimizing, and that's great and important, but that can't work forever, and you really need those wow moments to keep things fresh.
Very nice. And a lot of those wow moments are in the games. A question from the audience
Yep.
is, how, if at all, is HQ planning on increasing engagement outside of the games?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something we talk about a lot with again, a product that's not on very often. I think largely, frankly, we care a lot about giving an incredibly engaging experience when we're live. And we're very purposeful about not extending that experience beyond that live moment. I think it makes every show that is on more special. And ultimately, we aren't necessarily in the business of making something that's going to keep you glued to your phone throughout the day, mining for power-ups or playing our game. We want to give you a very engaging, very specific amount of time that we hope to make wonderful. But we don't necessarily spend a lot of time trying to enhance our shows and our games outside of when we're live, because we think that there's a lot of other things to do, and our time slots for other shows. I think our other shows are on at different times, and we'd rather give you lots of different type of content that you can engage with or not, than just pushing it all toward one set.
Nice. And a quick reminder, I think y'all are doing a pretty great job from what I see, but we will have a little bit of time for more of these questions from you all, so continue to send them in if you have them. But before we dig into that, I guess for anyone that's just getting started or thinking back to when it was those early days and it was time to think about what are the product principles that I want to bring into this project, what are some key things that folks starting out can have in place from the start to set their product up for success?
Sure. So this is tangentially related to product, but I would say people, like the people that you work with are far and away the most important part of your company. I was very lucky to work with such amazing people at HQ, and I think that helped us find our way in some ways. But I think that is the most important thing. If you find great people, the idea that you start with will almost certainly not look anything like where you end up or what it morphs into along the way. So the people that can support that is very important. So that's a big one. I think, but flexibility is also huge in product development.
Okay.
I would encourage, as formal or informal as you'd want with testing frameworks, to test as many things as you possibly could with your product, because the best way to learn about your product performance and to figure out new features to build is just by throwing stuff out there and seeing what sticks. And doing it in an analytical way, but at the end of the day, conjecturing around a conference room table will do far less for you than trying stuff and putting it out there. Even if you're afraid to see the reaction, it's super, super helpful and invaluable.
Amazing. Awesome. All right, so more of these fun questions from the audience.
Yeah, let's do it.
Maybe I'll throw in some that I make up and you won't know if
Please.
they're from the audience. Like, why, no. How is it decided at what times of the day the games would get played?
It was arbitrary. It was when I wanted to be in front of a computer.
Oh,
No.
You're on his schedule.
You're on my time. So we experimented with a lot of times early on. Some of it was like fairly logical. We knew we were going to have users on the East Coast. We were going to have users on the West Coast. So 9 p.m. felt like the right. So yeah, we started at 8:30. We tried to show at midnight, and we'd use our viewership numbers to hone in on the right time. But 9 p.m. worked well.
Was that the first time?
No.
Do you
First time was
remember?
so I think the first time was at 4.
Okay.
When you're starting a startup or running a small company and nobody is using the thing, my guess is the employees of the company are not going to opt in to start for a 9 p.m. show.
Well, during my birthday would be
but
lovely.
I don't. That's just my guess, and I think where we started too. But we wanted a night show and a day show, and we just wanted to make it work on the East Coast and the West Coast. It does make it very hard for that international angle that I said. I mean, like 9 p.m. here is 2, 3 a.m. in London. So we have a lot of users there that do play in the middle of the night, but I think maybe would like a different time. But most of it was just trial and error, trying it a bunch of times, seeing what drove the most usage, and then hopefully still focusing in on that gathering time, group play that we had in mind from the beginning. The like 2:30 feeling in the office on the East Coast was our 3 o'clock time slot, the lunch time on the West Coast. So times where people were going to be gathering together.
Very nice. Okay, you mentioned a couple of things that didn't go as planned, but were there any crazy big glitches you had, and what did you do to avoid them in the future?
Yeah, I mean, we still have crazy big glitches all of the time. I think one thing that the overarching answer to glitches in some ways was trying to make them more of a fun communal moment. We had this like pretty technical difficulties screen, and the host would Scott, our host at the time, we turned him into this lag daddy meme when the feed was lagging, and I think that like that was the real teachable moment for us. Like turn these things that really could be disasters in some ways into fun communal moments. And
like
sure, we had games with millions of people that would just not work. People would try to submit their answers. You can bet that our customer support lines
And was this in your time
crazy.
fielding some of those?
Certainly, and throughout I still help field those questions, but it's more just turning them into teachable moments. We also have our own non-technical errors. We do write content and produce content every night. We had a question a few nights ago, a few weeks ago now. I wish I remembered it, but I only remember the bad answer. It was a question about fruits, and the right answer was cranberries, and we were wrong. We have a whole team of fact checkers, but we were wrong. And I mean, you've never had more people scream at you about cranberries in your whole life. But again, it's all about turning these errors into something that's fun and communal, and we don't beat ourselves up about it. But we fix it, and we're a living, breathing show. We're a fun new piece of technology, and so we don't beat ourselves up about it. I think that when shows do break, so when we had a show, and you brought up lack of sleep earlier. I think broken shows certainly contributed to that. In that you have a show on at 9. We at times did a show at midnight, as I said, and sometimes we had a show at 7 a.m. and you had to make sure that for the next show, whatever went wrong was fixed. So we thankfully had a lot of time throughout the day to fix things, or try things. But if it breaks at 9 and there's another show at midnight or at 7 a.m., then we're certainly all hands on deck to make sure the next show doesn't glitch, because the lag daddy meme is only funny for like a few times.
I mean, opinions.
Yeah, true.
Okay, very, very funny about the cranberry. If you find the answer, please.
I will.
Initial
We'll
question,
share it after.
I am curious. Okay, cool. I'm going to do a quick little refresh right here. I hope all of you are participating.
Ask anything you'd like.
Ooh, he's opening the realm. What is your favorite fruit?
Wow, I shouldn't say cranberries, huh? Because they aren't. And I actually think the question was about like whether it's fruit. Anyway, I really love mangoes. They're delicious.
Nice. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the partnerships and the in-app purchases, but the question from the audience is, how are you monetizing your app? So if there's anything you want to expand on there of how you decide which percentage or what the process was, the steps you needed to take to get to that level?
So I think what's really interesting about how we approach revenue, I mean, it really shows the kind of weird space that we're in, this in between, and that our partnerships team functions very similarly to a television model, and that's because we have these very high viewership numbers, and without being too specific, if we were to compare ourselves to nightly viewerships of cable channels, we'd be very high up there on the list. So because of that, our partnerships team, focuses our revenue sales a little bit more like television, whereas on the in-app purchase side, we're really a game. I mean, we have a lot of good comps for how that works. So I think it is very interesting that we operate in two very different ways. At the end of the day, I mean, I don't believe that any company should, and we are not ashamed of the ways that we're making money. But we do, as I said before, with some of the partnership stuff and in-app purchases, really want to make sure that it's additive. Mm-hmm. That power-ups that we're selling are making the game very fun for everyone and not taking away from users that aren't making those purchases, that our partnerships are making the game a lot more fun and a lot more engaging and enjoyable. So we set a pretty high bar for what and how we monetize.
Do you ever turn things down that are...
Yeah, all the time.
Nice. All right. So in the context of product development and growth strategy, do you approach HQ as a game, an app, or a media network? You just mentioned you're kind of both.
Yeah.
Personal opinion or top-down opinion?
I mean, I think that's in some ways kind of the beauty of what we made, is that you can't necessarily put us in either of those boxes, and so we're something in between. At the same time, when we think specifically about growth, I would say that apps and gaming, really gaming apps, have many more lessons to grab from than a media company or a television show, because we aren't selling. We have 3 shows, but we're not selling like lots of different types of content. We're not necessarily spinning out new content for new audiences all the time. A lot of media networks grow by finding new audiences and just creating new content for those audiences. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the real product changes that we make draw on more inspiration from games. The general app category to growth, something that we haven't really spoken about that much, that we consider a very important part of our product, but maybe isn't necessarily product development, is our push notifications. So because we are live, you need a push to remember to play.
You.
There are enough people out there that set alarms for our show, which is lovely. But we do that for you. We send you push notifications. There are a lot. That has been an incredible growth vector for us, like figuring out how to optimize. And so that's really on the app level, I guess, because all apps send push notifications. There are some that are really, really good at targeting users with the right copy,
message, right time,
right message, right time, and so I think you might know a little bit about this as well. And so I think that has been a very effective method for us when you bucket us as an app to grow.
Nice. Any other channels that have been particularly effective beyond the sharing and the push notifications? Any kind of ads or
so
strategy?
I would say. So we do not do any paid marketing really, which has been great. We also give out free money though, so you can be the judge on whether that's paid marketing. I would definitely venture to say that being able to message that you can win money for free is something that everybody should take home and use, because people really like free money. It isn't why people stay though. We don't think on our product. I think it is a nice messaging strategy, and people definitely do show up for bigger prizes. But at the end of the day, the engagement comes from the fun experience and the glory of winning, rather than just the free money aspect of it. And we see in 2018 we had a deal that essentially led us to a few Super Bowl ads. And we were trying to figure out like what is the right way to capture what we do. And we had this wonderful woman, Lauren May, who had sent us a video of herself winning, I think $11. And she lost it.
Pumped?
Lost it. And we get videos like that all of the time. I mean, they're my favorite to watch.
Oh.
That and watching like kids play with their parents. But seeing users react like that to like the glory of winning the game and not necessarily the money that comes with it. And to close up the Super Bowl loop, we used her video as our Super Bowl commercials. She was certainly shocked. I was seeing herself in the Super Bowl ad.
She really
nothing that I've ever
$11
experienced, but I'm sure that she had another meltdown once she saw that.
I want that video in next year's.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. It was self-fulfilling. So yeah, I mean, a long way of saying that we don't do paid marketing really, but we have free money channels that help, and then we also have, I think, really strong social engagement. Which is mostly through Twitter, and we have a Reddit community too that is fairly strong. But because what we have is so communal, bringing that online through Twitter and engaging with our audience that way has been a very useful way to keep people around and get the right messages out.
Nice. I have great news. Our amazing audience, I believe, found this question.
All right.
According to USDA forecast, which of the following fruits did the United States produce 856 million pounds of in 2014? Wow, you guys, I'm impressed.
What were the answers?
Apples, grapes, cranberries, dill pickles, curveball.
Dill pickles was certainly not in our show. So there you go. I think it was supposed to be cranberries.
Wow.
And we got it wrong, but that's okay. It happens. It happens.
It does.
Thank you for finding that question, whoever found it. It is. We never reuse any content. Which is like hard for our writers because
Wheel of Fortune in the old days.
Unlike Wheel of Fortune in the old days, but they had to fight with the internet a little bit less than we do. And so, because pretty much everything, including this, that we put in our show, even though it's not recorded, it's not online anywhere, is immediately stored by a bunch of different fan websites, what we asked. So we can't re-ask questions. Every once in a while, we'll do, when we have a question that's particularly difficult, or a lot of people get wrong, we call them savage questions. And that has become a nice buzzword for us. So we'll do like super savage games or like year in review games. So every once in a while we'll reuse a question, but even then we'll reword it a little bit. So unfortunately this knowledge that you were just given will not help you in our show
Not useful in this
anymore.
particular case,
but it's a good dinner time fact.
Definitely. Speaking of reacting super quickly and giving us that question, where did it go? Okay, what's the secret to super low latency in a live interactive video app? So
Did Amazon ask this question?
I don't know, but
so I think that cloud computing helps a lot, and being able to scale up efficiently. I think that it's just a little bit of a different way of thinking about video experiences when it comes to low latency. I mean, when we have just different trade-offs. We want to make sure that everybody is seeing exactly the same things at exactly the right time. Actually, to take a step back for those that don't know why we need such low latency or what low latency is, it's basically just the round trip time from the phones to our servers, collecting our answers and showing our questions. We need that to be at the same time for everybody because the show is completely live. And so if you miss a question, or if you see a question later than somebody else, the collection period for those answers have stopped and you would be eliminated. So it is super important for us that everybody is experiencing exactly the same thing at exactly the same time, which is a very difficult challenge and something that frankly isn't really necessary in a lot of other video streaming experiences. When you're watching a live sports game, if your feed is delayed by 15 seconds or so from a friend's, yeah, you might see the shot a little bit later, but it's basically fine. If the feed cuts out, it's basically fine. So those experiences are optimizing for quality, basically, making sure that the video looks good and that you're able to see you're able to see enough of the action. So even if it is delayed, but they want to give you the full picture, they can. For us, it's kind of the opposite. We just optimize for timeliness. So if we have to degrade video quality, we have a lot of smart tricks around what video quality we should be showing you. If we need to just drop parts of the video just to get you up to real time, we'll do that. So it's just a different use case that we're optimizing for. Then, of course, at the end of the day, our questions are sacred, really. I mean, the shows, the show and the host that we have are a very important part of the experience. But the question is if everything else is stripped out, the question is what remains. So we make sure that those are at the lowest of latencies and are served a little bit differently.
There you go. All right, we are reaching our time, but I know some big changes are going on for you at the time.
Yeah.
For someone named Forbes 30 Under 30, I'm curious what's next.
Yeah. So I'm actually on my way out of HQ Trivia, which is a funny thing to say at the end of this conversation. But I mean, it's been such an amazing ride, such an amazing experience. And I've learned more than I ever could have imagined learning. And I think there are a lot of very interesting applications of technologies and products that we've used at HQ or similar to HQ that still have a lot of untapped potential and uses out there in the world. So we'll see for me, but I think that there's a lot of exciting ways to apply some of these learnings.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing so many learnings.
Yeah, please.
Thank you all for being a part of this.
Thank you for having me.
Great questions. All right, I think mingling and networking is in store.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Oh.